You're listening to the Becoming More Me podcast with me, Theresa Lear Levine. You're already enough, but if you're anything like me, you thrive when you're stretching, creating, and aligning with the person you feel called to be, and creating greater calm, clarity, and confidence in your life, as well as room for pleasure and expansion. Through amazing stories, conversations, and offerings, this podcast is here to inspire and support you. Get ready to release the negative, reinforce the positive, and elevate our consciousness and vibe together as we tap into our limitless potential to transform and grow. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Becoming More Me. I wanted to check in with you guys today on a solo episode because I am in the last week of writing my manuscript for my book before I start handing it off to the editor and going through all that and the formatting and everything else. And I just wanted to kind of provide a snapshot of what that's looking and feeling like right now. And I really do feel like it relates to so many other projects and things that we work on in life. So even if you never intend to author a book, we're all trying to authentically document and share our journey, whether it's just within the four walls of our homes or with communities and a greater audience. And when we start doing things like writing a book, things get vulnerable. I'm taking a little longer than was originally part of my program to do my manuscript. And I had to, have some hard conversations with myself and with my coach about that, because 5 weeks was not enough time for me. Heading into the summer, knowing that the summer is when I, have my kids at home, my routine is the loosest. And I had 2 vacations planned during that time. And there's no part of me that wanted to sacrifice the enjoyment of vacation in order to pen a book within a certain time frame. For me, so much of the outcome of what I've learned through things that I'm sharing in Becoming More Me, the book, is about living through the life of pleasure and is about being able to slow down so that you can have the traction and support that you need. And I have spent a lot of time writing about those kinds of things and how our groundedness precedes all sorts of things that we're trying to cultivate in our life. And without it, it's really hard for us to tap into our intuition and to really lean into pleasure and to allow the universe to support us and our own self-trust to develop. So knowing the way that I wanted to enjoy my time, and knowing that I also will probably never, ever, ever feel like this thing is ready to hand off to anybody. Truth. I extended by several weeks, and I felt really good about that. And also, here I am with 5 days, less 4.5 days left until I need to hand it over. And it's crazy. It's really, really crazy. There's so much left to do. There are chapters that have a lot more writing and finishing work to be done to them. And all of the little things that I've worked through previously are still showing me what's left of them, limiting beliefs and self-doubt. There are times when I look at parts of this manuscript and I think, wow, I can't wait for people to read this. And there are other times when I think, does anybody want to read this? Will it land with them? Will it resonate? Am I talking too much about myself? Is this, how does this relate to what other people are going through? And, a lot of self-questioning. And, it's also been written from my very ADHD mind. So if others out there are ADHD writers, this book was a combination of, brainstorming ideas and then, putting them on a spreadsheet and figuring out what chapters they might belong to before I even knew what chapters I was writing. It was a combination of pulling pieces out of transcripts from interviews I've given or voice notes that I have made on a whim. So many ideas come to me in odd places. And thankfully, my phone is almost always nearby. And so I pick it up and I use the voice notes app and I just say whatever it is, whether it's a spoken paragraph that I can copy and paste directly into the book or it's a concept. But all of that stuff has to get processed. Literally, like the first 2 weeks of the writing process was just me pulling things from different places that I knew needed to be a part of this in one way or another and trying to figure out how to fit them in. And I think if I were to write a book again, I might try doing it in a fluid way, like maybe even trying from beginning to end. I've skipped all over the place in the writing of this. Sometimes I'm writing the conclusion, sometimes I'm writing the introduction, sometimes I'm writing things that fall in between. Sometimes I'm thinking something goes someplace and then I put another chapter before it or after it and rearrange the order. So, yeah. And then I have to figure out like what ties into things. And it's this intricate patchwork quilt that is far more complex than I imagined it would be. And I'm sure I'm creating some of that for myself, but it's also way more vulnerable feeling than I thought it would be. I have taken good attention to caring for my visibility blocks and the areas where I get a little bit resistant to sharing or fully expressing myself. And yet, we were showering the other morning after our workout and I was talking with my husband, more like I was having like a breakdown. Not completely unlike the one that I actually wrote about in the book, which is an interesting story. But I was just kind of having this moment where everything was feeling kind of heavy. And as I came out of the shower and was drying myself off, I just said to him, I'm like, this just is so much harder than I thought it would be, and so much more vulnerable feeling than I imagined it would be. And it's really interesting because he's given me all the space and time and support and allowed me to bounce anything off of him, but he hasn't asked me to read a word of it. And I'm grateful for that actually, because I don't think I would let him yet. But also there are a lot of parts of it I want him to read before it goes to editing, or at least before it goes to publishing, because there's stories that include him, and I want to make sure that they're things that feel good for him to have me share. So yeah, and it's been an interesting week. We were on vacation last week. We went up to Cape Cod and rented this gorgeous house right on the side of a pond, a large pond. I'd honestly call it more of a lake, but I don't, there's differences apparently. So we're staying on this pond with its own dock and kayaks and all sorts of things. And across from the house, if you go across the pond, there was like a beachy area, and it was so nice. And there was also parts of the house that were just perfect for writing. So, like I think I mentioned before, I knew that was going to be like my little Walden for the week. And initially, the book was already supposed to be at the editor at that point. But I was really grateful to be able to write some parts of it sitting on the second story deck, or sitting on, there were so many decks on this house, but I sat on many of them and wrote at different times, and also places within the house. And it was just nice to have a different place to be creative. And I would take my computer down by the pond sometimes and do a little writing, but mostly I did my writing that week in the car to and from vacation, because I wanted to write a little bit every day, but I didn't want my vacation to be impacted by my need to get the book done. I wanted to just enjoy those mornings of the kids waking up and just running down to the pond and, running down the dock and jumping in. And my 6-year-old insisted, the youngest of our group, insisted on swimming by himself with no help across the pond to the beach. And that's like a 20-minute swim for a 6-year-old. and back too. And he did it multiple times that week. I was so proud of him. He had a life vest on, but he's still all the work to get from one side to another was his arms and legs, and it was fun. We followed along with him in the kayaks and were there if he needed a rescue, but he was so proud of himself going across that pond back and forth. And I loved that. I loved the memories. I loved having my mom and my stepdad there and being able to share it all with them. And we did a lot of fun things. We went up to Boston one day and went to Paul Revere's house, and we we ended up in a thunderstorm out on a 120-foot schooner. That was interesting. But memories were made. And we also got to eat at the oldest restaurant in the United States while we were up there, which was really cool. I think it was Union Oyster House. It was really good. So we had a fun day in Boston. If you're watching the video, you can see I've just switched locations. Hopefully that's not too jarring. We've had this like plumbing catastrophe happening this weekend and this week. And the plumbers are here and there's a lot of banging on pipes happening downstairs. So that's right next to my office. So as that started up, I was like, I need to move. So yeah, it was a great vacation. We took one day, and I think it was my mom's favorite part, maybe even Bruce, my stepdad's too. We went whale watching and just got surrounded by like 13 humpback whales, and just the displays they put on were amazing. So cool. It's an awe-inspiring sight to see whales up close. Something I never get tired of. And what else did we do while we were up there? We ate a lot of ice cream. My husband's a huge fan of ice cream, and he will seek out any and every place to go get some. On the way from Boston, we went to Hornstra Farms, which is, I forget, on one of those like top 10 lists or something. It appears for one of the best places in the United States to have ice cream, and it did not disappoint. It was delicious and super cute and right on the pathway that we were on. So yeah, it was a nice trip. What else did we do? We took a train ride one day. That was actually kind of awful. The kids really made it unpleasant, and it wasn't super entertaining, so kind of didn't blame them for getting bored and irritating us, but it is what it is. I was still glad to see the sights. The train was really cool, but probably not the highlight of our trip. For me, the highlight was just all the time on the pond, at the house, and experiencing the local beaches too. Every night we would go to a different beach for sunset, and the kids loved getting in the water at sunset and playing, and we loved seeing all the different sea life. There was a lot of seagrass. There was a lot of really extreme tides up there. We went to one beach twice during the week, and the second time we went back, we really thought that we were not at the same beach. I had to pull up Google Maps to see the structures and things that we had seen when we were there before, because they were all underwater when we went back. So I think that was Breakwater Beach, and beautiful sunset and beautiful beach. It was kind of interesting to see the way the landscape changed so much depending on the time of day and everything else. The one time we were there in the morning for a sunrise walk, and the second time we were there at sunset. So two very different times of day and two very different looks on the beach. So yeah, last week was vacation, and at the tail end of the vacation, a couple days before the actual anniversary, we went out to dinner to celebrate the day that we met 17 years ago. My husband and I, with my mom and my stepdad. The kids stayed home and played Wii and did kid stuff and ate pizza, and everybody had a good time. And we did a lot of reminiscing while we were at dinner about growing up, about our grandparents, about my great grandparents, who would be my mom's grandparents or my stepdad's grandparents. And that same evening, we found out that Jeff's grandfather passed away. And it was so nice to think that we were reminiscing about him at that same time in retrospect. Now, we felt so grateful because at the end of June, actually it was more like mid-June, right after the kids got out of school, we flew down to Florida to go visit him. And he was still, very very functional and talkative and, getting up and walking and eating and doing all the things. He's 97. So um, that was amazing. And we went out for like pizza and Italian food with him one night. And I will never forget just the way he was just devouring like all the rolls on the table, and just, he had such a hearty appetite. And then the next day we saw him one more time, and we went out to Jackson's Ice Cream, which if you are ever in the Fort Lauderdale area, definitely go to Jackson's. It's a landmark, and they have amazing ice cream, great cheeseburgers, and all that kind of stuff. And, he had a cheeseburger and he just devoured his chocolate ice cream, loved it. And it was very shortly after that that he kind of just started refusing to eat, and things went downhill in a hurry. But I'm so grateful to think that like we were the last ones to go out and have like a fun celebratory meal with him, and that he really enjoyed it and was present for it. And it was really special. So yeah, we had a vacation last week. We had that loss, then kind of coming back wasn't really kind of as we expected it, because of that loss and because of these plumbing issues that we're now having and everything else. So it's been an interesting time, but I'm still, pumping this book out. And as soon as I get done recording this podcast, I'm going to go pump out a couple more chapters and review a few more things and just get closer to being able to hand this off. But I just wanted to shed a little light on the vulnerability that comes with the kind of sharing that I'm doing, and that I understand how it comes up for other people too. Even if we've examined our feelings and had consciousness and awareness around the way that things that, we're working through or sharing can be difficult, it'll still come up, and it's hard. And it's also really transformative and helpful. And I'm really glad that I'm doing it. It's part of the reason why I wanted to write a book. And I know, at least my intention is for it to help connect me even more to the people who I'm intended to be connected with in this world, and who will resonate so much with the stories I'm sharing, and the techniques, the exercises, the awarenesses that can be gained and applied to their own situations through the chapters of the book. So, getting excited. The launch date's going to get pushed back a little bit naturally, because everything else is getting pushed back a little bit. But right now, I'm hoping that things will line up to launch on the full moon at the end of October. That's what I'm working with, after I double, triple check that it doesn't interfere with anniversary plans that my husband and I have for our wedding anniversary, or I don't think we have any Mercury retrograde happening at that point. I didn't want to release in August because of the Mercury retrograde. I had wanted to release at the end of September, but then when I pushed things off, it wasn't possible. So now we're looking at the end of October. So yeah, I will keep you guys updated. Definitely shoot me a message if you want to get on the wait list for the book. And, there'll be a lot more coming about that soon too. I would imagine we'll have a link in the show notes where you can join the wait list if you want to be notified when it launches and stay in the loop. I would love nothing more than to have, support on launch day, and to just have it be an amazing time and a great, it's really a beginning. It's the end of the writing process, but it's really the beginning of the book doing the work that I hope it will do and help people to do. So I know that even once launch day comes and goes, it's just another beginning. It's just another continuation. It's just part of the journey. And I'm just really grateful to be on it and to have the support that I do. I'm really lucky to have, my husband, even this week, as I was having my little shower meltdown, he's like, you want me to book you a room at Perry Cabin for the weekend so you can just go write? What do you want me to do? Just totally here for me to support in whatever way I needed. And I'm just going to stay put. I want to be with my people. But it's nice to know that, he understands how big of an undertaking this is, how much effort is being put into it, and how consuming it is for me right now. Like, it honestly feels good just to be behind this microphone doing a podcast instead of writing right now. And before this, I taped a podcast with a guest and one of my clients, Dr. Janine Krause, and that felt so good too, just to have a nourishing conversation and not be in writing mode. So I think these back-to-back podcast recordings actually set me up beautifully for the rest of my day to be focused around writing until I pick my kids up from camp later on today and enjoy the evening with my family. And I'm just going to keep the vibrations that I'm putting into the book positive and intentional. I think that's more important than anything else. You know, I've absolutely refused to write in negative headspace, in a feeling of pressure, or with that hustle, strive, forced mentality, because that's so much of what I preach in the book about ending. You know, when we slow down, things really do open up for us. Sometimes that means speed up. Sometimes that just means we get so much more of so many good things. And I can't write a book and put it out there about things like that if I wrote it from a different energetic place. So just know that there's integrity in what's being written and shared. And I'm just really hoping that conveys and is felt as people listen to this or read this book. That's the next thing I need to do, guys. I need to start talking to the recording studios about getting the audible version created. And I'm excited for that. I feel like this book is going to translate really well to Audible. It's my voice, it's my words, and what better than to hear me speak the book. You know, I've always felt like interviewing, podcasting, talking is a strong point for me. And my book is written a lot like how I talk. So we'll see how it all turns out writing wise, but I know it's going to sound great when I read it and it's going to convey really well. So I'm very excited to create and produce the Audible version. So thank you guys for listening to my update. If you're going through your own journeys of sharing, getting vulnerable, peeling layers, and discovering more about yourself, just know I feel you. I'm with you. Lean into modalities like emotional freedom techniques, like hypnotherapy, meditation, breath work, whatever increases your own self-awareness and brings you inner peace so that you can move through it with the grace, the joy, the pleasure, and the intention that you want to. Thanks for listening. Thanks for spending some of your precious time with me today. If you loved this episode, please leave a review or simply share it with someone else who would get great benefit from it too. If you share on social media, please tag me so I can personally connect and thank you. Until next time, keep taking bold and brave steps towards becoming more of who you want to be in this world. You are capable, you are worthy, and you are enough. And if your inner critic is still trying to argue with those facts, hit me up. We've got work to do.